Channel Book Club lovers. We are here today with a cozy and warm and amazing conversation lined up for you today. And as is my custom, I always like to start my introduction of my guests with a quote. And today's quote is very simple and short and succinct. And it's from Buki Emeketa, who is the author of The Joy of Motherhood. And this quote sums up this lovely lady and her message, which is, a man is never ugly. And today we have Yvette Rachikopa in the studio, known as Yvette Aloe to her thousands and thousands of fans on social media. Hi, Yvette. How are you?
I'm good, Selina. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm awesome. I'm very excited to have you here in the studio. Yvette is a healer. That's the best way I can think of to describe her. Of course, the way that she heals is that she has really honest conversations with us about ourselves, our self-talk, and some of the thought patterns we entertain that are not actually benefiting us. She does this through her coaching and through much of the work that she does. And she's been doing this for a while before she published her amazing book, which is entitled Living Consciously. Yvette is also known as Yvette Aloe on digital spaces. She's a leadership developer, NLP life coach, wellness educator, and business strategist who aims to change the world through changing individuals. Her goal is to play her part in the global transformation by focusing on healing, leadership on a personal level, and in entrepreneurial, educational, and corporate spaces. Through her workshops, private sessions, and social media, she's helped thousands of people to change their self-awareness and to heal from trauma. Many she has worked with have found the courage to face childhood rejection, grief, self-sabotage, perceptions about self that do not serve them, and those that they care for. This has led them to have better self-confidence, careers, better relationships with others, better relationships with their finances, and most importantly, a better relationship with themselves. Something I think we've all learned we need since the COVID pandemic began. Using social media as a tool, Yvette engages with over 35,000 people on a daily basis, sharing inspirational content that focuses on awakening the mind and soul, and along with business growth focused content. When she's not online, she's on the ground hosting personal and business development workshops through her own entities and partnerships. And if you'd like to know a bit more about Yvette, she's got a website, yvettealoe.co.za, and she's got a lot of information about the work that she does, more detail, including her vision, her mission, her values, and how you can get her to do some of this amazing work with you in groups or as an individual. But tonight, we'll be talking about Living Consciously, her book. So Yvette, without further ado, tell us a little bit about Living Consciously. How did this book come about?
Living Consciously, I call it, it's my first book, and how it came about is just through natural unfolding. You know, I didn't grow up thinking one day I'll write a book. It wasn't like a goal that I set out. But I've unfolded, and I became through my coaching and the work that I do and inner healing work. And I don't know, one day the thing that came up is brought it up. He brought up how much money you can make having a book published, and I was surprised. You didn't like of sorts, and I was like, what? No ways. And then that was one thing, and then people on my and social media asked me a lot. And then eventually all these signs from the divine and from different directions, yeah, I should write a book. And so I took a lot of work from my social media. I expanded, took a lot of my own healing consciously. I'm not sure if you've read it yet, but when you go over it, it literally is like all the things that when I was growing up, or somebody has said to me, or somebody had stopped, said, you know what, you're not the problem, or you know what, this is why you act in this way, or this is how you can see yourself in certain things. So it's exactly that, and it's being conscious. that's how it came about. It was just an organic flow. And I'm one of those people that if the universe says, you know what, this is the next step in your journey, I'm like, I out. If it comes to me as an idea, prepared for it, and it's not about me being perfect or anything. It's and then put it out there and see what happens.
Well, what an idea that is. I haven't finished the book, I have to be honest, but what I've read so far had me kind of, screaming with excitement. I was excited to my toes because there's some things that you say, especially you mentioned the divine. And the relationship with the divine is a strong thread from the very beginning of the book all the way through. And a lot of the solutions you proffer for people come from there. And one of the things that I found very, very interesting is anything you cannot say about God, you cannot say about yourself. Very, very powerful statement to put out there. Because earlier on in the book, you talk about how if you believe in the presence of a divine, if you believe in the presence of a creator, then you have to also accept that you are created, but more importantly, you too carry the DNA or the nature of being a creator yourself. So there are amazing affirmations and exercises that you put at the end of the chapters that really, I think, tap into that creative power we have in our relationship with the divine, being created and carrying the divine's nature, which is to create. So I found that very, 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 very interesting. And when you tell your story of how the book came to be, I find that also very interesting because it's quite clear that you live the walk and that the book came, as you say, out of real life experiences. I'd just like to say hi to Maud. It's a pleasure to have you here. Maud is joining us from Facebook. Anyone else who's watching the show, please drop a line, tell us where you are watching from. If you have read Yvette's Living Consciously, what you think about it, if you have a question for Yvette. And if you haven't read Yvette's Living Consciously, you can also ask a question so that you can make your decision about where to get the book from. Just before we move on with the conversation, Yvette, please tell our viewers where they can get the book from.
Available currently in South Africa in paperback format, so available for sale online on .co.za and on from the Book Circle Capital, which is a store and online platform. I also ship books internationally. It is a little bit higher for people outside of South Africa, but I outside of SA to just find a solution that works for everybody. And it's available on Amazon. So the digital version is available on Kindle or Amazon online. You won't have the physical copy, but I'm also physical copy printed through Amazon. But yeah, if you're outside of the country, you can still just find a way to work with you to get the book to you.
Awesome. And everyone, you can find Yvette on basically Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. She also does have an amazing YouTube channel with amazing videos, people. Short inspirational bursts, questions that are thought-provoking, all delivered in Yvette's very calm, centered, soothing style. And she talks about a lot of things from relationships to all aspects of life, many of which are covered in her book. The chapters are short, but she does cover quite a lot of life experiences and life skills that we all need. So you can catch her on YouTube. Just look for Yvette Aloe. You can catch her on Twitter, Yvette_Aloe, Instagram, Yvette Aloe, and Facebook, Yvette Aloe. So very simple. You can find her at all of those places. And you can catch her on her website, which is makes for very interesting reading. So I really encourage you to access the book and to contact and connect with Yvette because a lot of the deep work that she's doing with people is work that I think we all should be taking a gander at, especially during these lockdown restrictions. Best time to develop a good relationship with yourself, isn't it, Yvette?
Definitely, yeah, definitely that. awareness. And I hope people aren't too afraid to reach out. I think I've noticed that emotions, we can feel the stuff going on, but we're so scared to reach out. So I like that you brought that people should reach out for whatever, whether it's reaching out to a social media platform, reach out somewhere.
Awesome. So we've got quite a few viewers who've joined us. So Wadzanai watching from Facebook, thank you for joining us and shouting out Wadzanai. Tatenda watching from Mount Pleasant, already enjoying the discussion. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I'm really enjoying Yvette. And then Maud Nale, I'm Maud Nale, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. Welcome, Maud. We love our brothers and sisters from Gauteng. I've been following Yvette on social media and loving the content she puts out. I agree with that. She just put out really good content. Very well thought of and very well curated. Norman, hello from Botswana, 100. We love that you're joining us. He's watching from YouTube. Maud, again, I've heard a lot about Yvette's book and will definitely get my hands on it this weekend, definitely. And if you are outside of South Africa, you heard it from Yvette herself, you will be able to get it. She will ship it to you. But I read on Amazon, Kindle, it was still good. It was still a good time. And you can still have both. You can have a Kindle version and have a hard copy version. I do that with a lot of my favorite books. Pumeza Langa, love Yvette. She's phenomenal. You've been following her content too. And then Maud, follow at Yvette_Aloe on Twitter. Exactly, 100% phenomenal. So Yvette, let's carry on with the discussion about the book, right? So let's get into what is inside the book. So in the book, what I found very interesting is you start with a conversation about you are good. So it's like you're laying a foundation for the rest of the journey that you're going to take readers through. What I also found was that the chapters were very short and forgiving, but very, very well written, very, very well written. And the style and tone of who you are as an individual, which is very calming, very lyrical, also came through quite nicely there. And then at the end, you took a lot of pains to create exercises. Now, some of them are affirmations or affirmation-based, but most of them are practical and challenge us as individuals to kind of identify where we're not getting it right. But what I love is that you don't just leave us in that place. You quickly take us to the place of how we can get it right and where we can start. So let's start with you are good. What were you thinking when you put that together, and why is that the first thing you tell us in the book?
It's such a good question, because I really don't book until for some I'm like, oh yeah, I wrote that. An interesting journey just to go back to that process, because it's like art, you maybe it'll this person. So your good was just based on the idea that the reasons that there's something wrong with us, we was deep in a belief that we have to be that there's so many different angles from the things we're taught, growing up. Sometimes it can come from that we believe. Sometimes it can come from us this belief that there's something wrong with you. From the time you're a little kid and you have to spend the rest of trying to become right. And I'm like reading and doing my own inner work. I got to the blame wrong with me. Like there is literally not me, and me to do any, and in that being I am enough. And I am good. I am not bad. And that Neil Donald Walsh, who I credit in the beginning of the book as one of my about really in his book Conversations with God, and it expands on it beautifully. But for me, it was just that there's so many systems. Every from you have to, and yeah, for me it was just laying a different foundation through my own journey, whether it's with the church, religion, structures, teachings. We don't even stop to question them. And is this really truth? And he taught it to me. I know this taught it to me. This structure brought this forward, but I really, this am really good. Like, doesn't matter what I do, doesn't I have to go back to this place of I'm broken and I have to become like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life thinking that I'm not good. So You're Good really started on that. Even though based on the divine and all of that, it's like, it's also just really a platform to sing, don't just take in information and receive it as your truth, regardless of where you get that information, and whether it's your parents to sit down and decipher, this I'm keeping, this I'm not keeping. Whether it's your friends who you trust, whether it's someone who in a certain way that says there's something wrong with you, you have to decipher and say, this doesn't resonate with my soul. And then got into the point where I'm like, this doesn't resonate with my soul. Maybe in a certain period of my life it did. Maybe I needed to hear that I was aligned to me. But right now where I'm going, this is the truth. So that's where that you also like a glitch, to say you've been good for the day you were born, and you've been born, and nothing has taken that away from you, and it's that. I think the basis of that was question everything. What's not, what settles with your soul, what doesn't, and then take it from there. And then that is where yourself, when you start to pack all the things that you've taken as your truth, because and then form your own truth that resonates with your perspective.
Wow, very powerful, very, very powerful. I think what I particularly enjoyed about that chapter, You Are Good, but a lot of the ethos of the book is that you ground our goodness in our coming from or out of the divine, and so if the divine is good, we are good. But you also quoted something from Genesis there, that when God created, he said it is good. So you actually are good. I found it very interesting that that was part of your premise, or the weaving of, the theory around you are good. Because I think often, that can be not as simple a statement as it appears to say. To say you are good. Well, what does that mean? What is good? And I think, to be honest, a lot of us have been having that conversation about us as mankind all over the world, but also in our different countries and cultures since COVID began, because the pandemic has been a great revealer of what good is good, and what good is actually not good. And so it's actually seems deceptively simple, but it's actually really powerful the way that you put that and anchored it in the book. And I found that quite surprising, because when I started reading it, I didn't think that you were going to go that route. When I read what the book is about healing from past traumas and embracing the what if and creating the life we wanted to lead, I almost thought, oh, okay, she's going to take us down this road. But the road that you took us down was very interesting and a surprise for me in a pleasant way, I must also add. But what I also loved is that the book is not just, even though we're saying things like you are good, and love is something that is created in relation to love. So, we love in relationships. So you can't just love on your own, and so if love has created you, then you can manifest love, but it manifests in relationship. So, I mean, those kinds of ideas can seem very highfalutin and very sort of airy fairy to a lot of people, but you come very practical with it, and you give us stories and examples in the book. Tell us how you navigated, what stories you wanted to share as you were telling us about all of those principles, because a lot of that stuff is personal. A lot of that stuff is not stuff that is wildly popular to say in our culture, but you told it very skillfully. How did you decide how far to go and how far not to go?
That's another good question. I think when you say it's not popular in our culture, to protect more than we are built to live in our truth. So that means that we something, because this societal thing, which is actually, I can feel myself getting angry on the end. Something happens that's traumatic to a child, but they must protecting other people, an uncle, a family member, because it's more about reputation and what will people, than it is about acknowledging what just happened to the child and getting them that they need and supporting them through that, and that's part, which I'm not a fan of. And because for me, again, my stubbornness comes because I had to lean on the divine a lot when I was, and growing up, I was like, okay, these people, just looking around, in my upbringing, realizing that the only person I need to please is God. That's a decision I made very early on, which what will people, and for me to find the stories, I think for me it was, I looked at my intention. Intention when I wrote the book was to heal, right? My intention was to spread love. The book was so that people can see God through me and the work that I do. That was all the intention that I put into it. So the desire to meet that intention was greater than the fear of what will people think. And apart from that, I packed that fear a long time ago in my childhood. I don't have that I don't carry that with me. So for me, I let that go and I looked at my intention. And the biggest thing is I'm also really big on honoring, people around me and some of the people that I bring up in my childhood, But I think for me personally, I exist for myself. And for me, it was about me. I never actually had a focus, and I only thought about intention, right? And honoring them too. They into detail about who, when, what, but you get the brief. How do I send this message? And I also just, sometimes I also created not characters. I protected certain people's names. So a lot of the examples in there are based on real life people, because again, in my work as a NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and is that I do a lot of healing work. So there's a lot of examples that are really close to human experiences, because of the work that I and myself, but mostly I think. So I looked at the intention, was the main thing. And in terms of finding the right, I wanted it to be relatable. When you look at teachers, right, whether it's Jesus, they used parables, right? That's the power of parables. You get to put yourself in somebody to tell a narrative, a story that somebody can resonate with. So from my teacher, this is how they did it. One of the most influential people tell stories. They're relatable. And I was like, I want to seem like this, like very detached from struggle or, having human experiences, but also where the healing is, that, oh, there's somebody that's gone through this bullying. There's somebody that's gone through abuse, that's gone through this, pull out. But in the same sense, I was like, this doesn't define me. So I also don't want to dwell on it too much. So I want to get to the point, like, okay, let's get shared enough for me to make the intention of let's heal, this experience, this is what it looks like when trauma causes you to have broken relationships, you attractively push you away. This is what it looks like when you have childhood trauma, which causes you to think that you're not, can manifest, or how it can manifest when you're trying to save money and you find how it can manifest in this way. So I think in order for things to resonate, powerful things, if you read the book like The Alchemist, right? A story, but life changes. You saw yourself in that that kid, throughout the story, or the guy. But I know the theme of the book, but the story, and late. So I think that's how I chose what to share. That okay, is this helpful? Is this necessary to share? And the intention, and that was the biggest thing. Does it allow the person to see themselves? Okay, this is what, because I mean, when someone says you're good enough, enough. It sounds very far, but it's, hey, this is why your relationships aren't working out. This relationships, this is why you keep attracting. It looks like attracting what emotionally unavailable in friends. This is people keep giving even when you're tired, because in your childhood perform or do more things so that you can feel valuable, right? So stories are what resonate with people's hearts.
That is very, very powerful. I think you're the first person whom I've ever asked that question to, because often when people write in nonfiction and they use stories to explain certain principles and things, I'm always like, how do you know whether you're sharing too much? And you're the first person who's answered that question in that way. And I found it very powerful because of the issue of intentionality, which is also a very strong theme throughout the book. And really, that's actually one of the key messages of the book, is that we've got to actually wake up, become conscious, self-aware, and live our lives intentionally. And that's how we can take ownership and take responsibility, which is what I think I love the most about your message, right? Is it puts the power back into our hands to say, hey, if this isn't working for you, actually, you don't have to just sit owning it. You can actually take ownership of the solution. You can actually take ownership of the healing. And so I really, really love that aspect of personal responsibility and that message of intentionality in the book. Just one last thing on what's in the book. And guys, if you've read the book, you know that I've only barely scratched the surface of all of the things that Yvette talks about in the book. But we only do have 45 minutes. And so, we're coming close to the last sort of third or quarter of our time. Fear and faith and love. Fear being the opposite of love, as opposed to faith, and how fear actually works. The energy you put into fear is the same energy you put into faith and love. Tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah, that I think a lot of my teachings, because the things that I believe about God itself were built around that foundation. And I think there's a verse. It's what is this? What's this? I think I said that fear and love cannot coexist or something like that. But I think there's also talks about fear, and fear has always thought about how we act from fear, and what that looks like. Fear and love is really based on our actions, and when we and there's a diagram in the book. In the I don't know if the version that I think it does. It shows you a fear and love meter, and literally when you act from fear, a lot of times it will create more fear. On my journey where I acted from fear, I was scared of getting up the wall, and there, I hurt somebody else, or I'm scared of failing, in this test because I'm acting, and then I black out in the test because I was acting from fear. Do this, so fear really puts us on the opposite end meter, on the negative end of that meter, and then where it's like what I think brings in wisdom. People are like, a lot of times we think fear is a good, that's how we're raised. Even when your parents want you to do something, sometimes as Africans, and instead you don't do it, but they forget to the wisdom. And when this happens, this is what might happen, and then giving you. And I feel like in some part, this is what the divine gives you free will and says, what, here is the free will, here hands on how you can exist. But if you do this, positive or negative consequences to your actions. And I think that's the biggest scheme. Instead of fear, we can act from wisdom or love. And love inspires wisdom, inspires all these other things whereby we're not so hard. Instead of when you find yourself, instead of building them, you can say, these are the lessons I'm taking from my past, right? And this is how I'm gonna move forward knowing that, okay, if in the past we lay head first, you know, and you got your heart, then the wisdom would say, oh, next relationship, I will take my time to get to know a person. I will listen. It will not put up a whole wall, which fear does, you know. And then you failed an exam, and then you're like, I don't want to fail. Like, fine, you're focused. What do you actually want out of it, right? And what is go speak to this. I remember when I failed my degree, you know, and I felt so terrible. Pushed me out and said, go speak to the psychologist and find out how you can improve your study methods. Wisdom, maybe don't pull an all-nighter, maybe set some boundaries in time to study. Wisdom will say, builder will say, study group, you know, do something. So it's that balance of fear and wisdom. And a lot of us tend to exist in the other end of fear, the end of love and wisdom, and that's where that came from, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's actually really, really it's beautiful because I think it exposes the lie in what we're told works, what we are told is beautiful, and actually reveals the truth behind the beauty that's all around us. So very, very powerful. And, you know, in the diagram, I think you talk about, I think the verse that you were talking about is perfect love drives out all fear. So in the diagram in your book, you actually put it, you put it in, so in the book, anyone who's watching, you'll see she actually puts the whole thing that she explained in the book with the diagram. And it's a very powerful diagram, a very powerful image to keep in your mind when you're making decisions. And we've got some more comments from the group. Far Cam says, I love, love, love. That must be for you, Yvette. Then Tatenda Tom, powerful. Thank you very much. It is very powerful, especially the discussion about fear, so much fear. And then Maud, your Twitter Spaces on healing was very powerful, Yvette. Very, very powerful, yes. And very powerful also this discussion we've had about fear, Yvette, because isn't fear the thing we're all battling on a daily basis right now? When we are assaulted by so many triggers and thoughts and feelings about that. What would you say to people struggling with anxiety, fear, worry, and stress right now because of things that are happening either politically, natural disasters that are happening all over the world? We've seen fires in America. We've seen huge storms and flooding in Europe and other places. We've also seen the third wave of COVID here on the African continent. A lot of fear, a lot of things outside of people's control, a lot of panic, a lot of anxiety. What would you say to people right now about that?
That is a really tough one, right? Because you know, on a daily, like you said, the word, you know, feels like you're being approached from all angles. Say acceptance. You need to acknowledge, right, that things have changed. Things look different because resistance, right, means accept it, you can't about it, right? So accept that things have changed, things look different, and you're responding to it. You know, so sometimes we really feel things and we are hard because we're like, oh, why am I acting like that? You're acting like that because there's a pandemic, acting like that because people are losing loved ones. So acknowledge your experience, right? Responding to something that is happening around you, and that this is happening around you, but then you're not resisting, and then something, right? And make different decisions, operate differently in this season, because sometimes when life looks different, and that doesn't make you should adapt, you know. So, you know, I've worked with so many people that have anxiety, and causes to anxiety, you know, sometimes it's past experience, future, whereby because you've had so many in the past, you've been felt alone in the past, lost a job in the past, and then now you're living again, so you're up here. And sometimes again it's having these thoughts and then projecting them into the this happens, and what if this doesn't happen to us? What if you do a job? What if you're alive on the other end? What if you find support? Those you can exist. So I think increase in this time, So I'd say acceptance, this is happening, and then increase. Because anxiety limits your options. It says this is the only thing I can do in this period, or I can't do anything, right? Your options. There's somebody that I can talk to. Is there a practice that I can do? Can I meditate? Are the positive outcomes that can exist? Because your mind, when you're anxious, the space where you feel very helpless, you mode and different type of responses, some experiences, and you feel very helpless. So you need to back to the present moment, right? Accept it. It's happening. Here, also increase your choices. Know that you have a choice on how to respond. You have a choice on what else to do this season and how to respond and what you want to focus on. Consider the positive what ifs. What if things do work throughout the other end? And what if you heal and get to the other side? So it's a tough one. I think that I've said something from somebody out there. And also what really helps with anxiety is breathing exercises, because it starts racing, the negative thoughts start coming down your thoughts, and then give yourself options. Remember me doing this, increase your options, find something else to focus on, find a different thought.
Increase your options. I love that. I love that. Very powerful what you were saying about the triggers being the past and limited options, and how we got to bring ourselves to the present, breathe, and start to consider the positive outcomes, and increase options. So increase options, definitely. I think that's going to be a new Thando Channel Book Club slogan of ours as we continue on in 2021. That's so powerful, Yvette. That's so powerful. Thank you. I mean, I even had to write that down. So powerful. Thank you so much for that. So a quick question before we come towards the end of the interview. I'd ask that you would prepare a reading, so we'll hear that at the end. But just before we get into that, tell us a little bit about the impact of the book. And what interests me about your journey, right, is that you had been doing your healing work and talking to people for a while before you started doing the book. And often people do it in the reverse. They do the book and then those kinds of opportunities come together. And actually the way you did it is actually wise, because you built the audience before you went you went back to them with the book. Tell me a little bit about the impact, and tell me a little bit about anything that has surprised you pleasantly from the way that the book has been received.
I'd say the impact of the book is as it should be. I think for me, I had a big goal when I wrote the book. I'm going to reach this target and bestseller, and then pandemics happen. Of course, I didn't keep allowing me to launch the book. I did my I went forward to distribute the book myself, because my book is self-published. So I think the impact for me more about quantity, and it's something that even with my family, I'm always like, quote me, buying the book because to help yourself, or like because you think you need it, or business being supported. I'm like, do you need the, like, it's great to be supported. I'm like, I want to offer value, I want to offer use and change. That's my intention, and I think that is just like, no, but I think I should just accept the support. For me, really, it's about, quality, coming back to me and saying, Yvette, I was depressed and I read the book and it really that space, it helped, or at least gets that better, because the book does help, managing emotion that. As I was going through a tough season in my life to get through that. I was struggling to process, my relationship with my parents, and the book helped me through that. For me, it's more of the, when I hear that, I think that's the biggest form of impact. In terms of the book has not been doing the numbers that I think I wanted to do, but I've also come to a space of accepting that acceptance. We're going through a pandemic, you know. I'm not going to be the best selling, and even if I did, I'm publishing and I was distributing on my own. That is what has been the biggest impact. I've had people read it from the US, you know, Zim, and I think I remember when I was setting the goal, one of my was to impact people on scale. And I remember when I was having my conversation with like, oh, you don't need to leave the country, because I've never left the country in my life. I've never been outside of South Africa or outside of. I remember one of my goals was global impact, and I was like, oh, look at you launching the book because of the pandemic has allowed you to have a wide focus. Is not a launch, it's inclusive. Now I have to put it on Amazon, you know, from get-go. Or, you know, I reached, so it has been the scale, you know, and I'm so grateful. So for, I think the impact is in terms of the book is that, you know, this person from Kenya, this person, you know, and they share the book, or there really has been more quality than it has been a number thing. And yeah, that's a lot in terms of just impact outside of my own physical. That has been beautiful to observe.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, anyone who's watching, you can launch a book during a pandemic. We'll find you and we'll talk about that book. And also, I just think that the topic and the things that you talk about in the book are needed for this time. So the timing actually was, you know, the right time. And everything has its time. Like before we came on live, we were talking about what will be. Everything has its time. And sometimes we can force things. Sometimes we can underestimate what we can do in a long period of time and overestimate what we can do in a short period of time. But everything has its time, and what will be will be. So without further ado, we're coming towards the end of our book club, and it has been such a pleasure chatting with you tonight, Yvette. Before we sign off for the night, I'd like to invite you to share a reading from your book with our viewers.
I actually forgot to be having me, so I'm just going to choose. In the spirit of what will be, random chapter, not so random, to be one of the good ones. So hopefully the divine will assist me.
They're all good. They're all good. All the chapters.
On boundaries. So let's see here. Boundaries. So I'm not sure how long we'll just stop, but I'll maybe for a minute or so.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. I'm going to read on boundaries. This is like has color inside and all the lovely things. So healing from your past trauma, but maintaining the healing is another. If you don't set boundaries, you may find yourself back that you worked very hard to get there. And that's the quote on the side of the page. And on the other says, boundaries protect everybody and must teach people how to treat us and create a pathway for us to have healthy, supportive relationships. To set boundaries in the amount of self-respect and self-awareness. Most people cutting friends and family off because they build up years of not communicating their boundaries, or they're not self-aware enough to even acknowledge that they were being mistreated. Setting boundaries, self-awareness, and to be, you have to be in tune with your emotions. They're there, the emotions, of course. Once anger that you may experience, you can then communicate to others that what they did made you uncomfortable, and then state how you would like for them to treat you. Most people wait years before communicating. I don't know.
Yeah,
I should continue.
No, that's really powerful, Yvette. Yeah, very, very powerful. And thank you so much for sharing that. And guys, if you want to know more about the rest of that chapter on boundaries, get the book. It's going to be worth it, worth your while and worth your time. And as Yvette says, it's really about the value, right? So if what she's said has rung a bell in any areas, any questions you're asking yourself about yourself, your past, and your future, and what you want out of life, it's a good time to spend some time with yourself reading the book. It's an easy read, a forgiving read, and very much a compassionate journey that will empower you and equip you and get you up on your feet and doing what you need to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was another great book club, and we've had the amazing Yvette Aloe with us. You can find her on social media. Just look for Yvette Aloe on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and she has an amazing YouTube channel with amazing short videos that are a really good time to watch. If you haven't got the book, at least you can go there straight away and start watching some of those videos, and that will whet your appetite for the book. You can also check out her website, yvettealoe.co.za, and if you would like her to ship a book to you, get in touch with her on any of those platforms. She's ready and available. And if you are overseas, you can get it on Kindle. It's a very affordable price and a very easy read. So it's been great having you all. Thank you, Pumeza, Tatenda, Maud, Fa, Norman, Wadzanai, and all the others that have been watching with us tonight. As per usual, stay warm, stay safe, and good night.